What looks like a simple pizza delivery can unravel a hidden world of grief. On a snowy Christmas Eve, a single father ordered a pizza, not knowing the woman delivering it had just lost everything. When his young son noticed her tears and invited her to stay, that one innocent question would change all of their lives forever. Meet Alex, a single father doing his best to create magic for his son on Christmas Eve. And meet Sarah, the pizza delivery driver hiding a crushing secret behind her professional smile. This is what happens when the invisible emotional labor of the gig economy collides with a child's instinctive kindness at the most vulnerable time of year. What unfolds in the next few minutes will reveal a hidden crisis affecting millions and ask one piercing question. When someone's world has just ended, can a stranger's doorway become a place to begin again? For Alex Morgan, Christmas Eve was a delicate operation, a meticulously planned mission to manufacture joy for his 7-year-old son, Ben. His ex-wife had the actual holiday day, so tonight was his only shot. The tree was up, the lights were twinkling, and the scent of pine filled their small apartment. But Alex felt the clock ticking. He saw the questions in Ben's eyes, the unspoken wondering about why mom wasn't here, why their family didn't look like the ones in the Christmas specials. So Alex clung to ritual. They'd build a gingerbread house, watch a movie, and order the traditional Christmas Eve pizza. It was a thin veneer of normalcy, but for a single dad working long hours as a graphic designer, it was everything he could muster. Across town, Sarah Jennings was 2 hours into her delivery shift. The red insulated bag sat on her passenger seat, already smelling of grease and cheese. She'd signed on for the evening block because the holiday pay multiplier was too good to pass up. The research is stark. Over 95% of food delivery drivers report crushing occupational stress. For Sarah, the math was simple. More deliveries equaled more money, and she needed every dollar. What the apps and the customers didn't see was the emotional labor happening inside her car. The surface acting, as psychologists call it, displaying a cheerful, professional demeanor regardless of what you're actually feeling. For Sarah tonight, that gap was a canyon. The first fracture appeared earlier that afternoon. Sarah had been scrolling through her phone during a rare lull at a pickup location. A memory notification popped up. A photo from 3 years ago, her younger sister Emily and their parents, all wearing ridiculous matching reindeer sweaters, laughing in a kitchen full of chaos. The caption read, "The only chaos we want." The pain was a physical blow, a vacuum that pulled the air from her lungs. Today was the anniversary. Not of their deaths, but of the last Christmas they'd all been together. The last normal one. The accident had come the following March. A slick road, a wrong-side driver, a collision that took 3 lives and left Sarah as the only survivor, both physically unscathed and utterly shattered. She took a few deep breaths, the way her therapist had taught her. She compartmentalized. She had to. The gig economy runs on relentless efficiency, and breaking down isn't in the algorithm. She had orders to deliver. But as the evening wore on and the snow began to fall in earnest, the loneliness of the work seeped in. Studies show gig workers score higher on loneliness measures, a state directly linked to depression and lower resilience. In her car, moving from one anonymous doorway to the next, Sarah was a ghost, a service, not a person. She delivered festive meals to houses bursting with light and laughter, each one a silent reminder of what she'd lost. Meanwhile, Alex was in the thick of domestic chaos. The gingerbread house had suffered a structural collapse and Ben was near tears. "It's supposed to look like the box, Dad." Alex kneeled on the floor, trying to use more icing as cement. "Buddy, sometimes the wonky ones have the most character. Look, ours has a cool leaning tower." Ben wasn't buying it. The night was threatening to spiral. Alex made an executive decision. "Okay, new plan. We order the pizza now, we put on the movie, and we can come back to this after." "Deal," Ben nodded, pacified by the promise of pizza. Alex pulled out his phone and placed the order, little knowing he was entering a request into a system that would send a woman holding a universe of grief right to his door. Sarah got the ping. Another delivery, an address 15 minutes away. She accepted it automatically. The snow was falling heavier now and the roads were getting slick. The constant calculation of risk versus reward played in her head. Slow down for safety and miss out on other deliveries, or push through. The financial precarity of this work makes that a daily, dangerous calculus. As she drove, the memories wouldn't stay boxed up. She remembered her mother humming carols while baking, her father pretending to be shocked by his gifts, Emily's excitement so intense she'd shake. The interior of her car, lit by the glow of her phone's navigation, felt like a tomb. Back at the apartment, the mood had lifted. The movie was on and Ben was laughing. Alex looked at his son, this tiny human who was his entire heart, and felt a surge of fierce, protective love. He also felt the familiar pang of wishing he could give him more. A bigger home, 2 parents under one roof, a Christmas that felt less like a careful performance. He pushed the thought away. This was their reality and it was filled with love. That had to be enough. The timer on his phone went off. The pizza was estimated to arrive in 5 minutes. He got up to grab some cash for a tip, deciding to be a little more generous tonight. It was Christmas Eve after all. Sarah's car struggled up the modest hill toward Alex's neighborhood. The wipers thumped against the gathering snow. She was close now, just a few more turns. But as she approached a stop sign, a wave of dizziness hit her. The grief, the exhaustion, the sheer weight of performing normality on a day that screamed loss, it all crested at once. She pulled over, not trusting herself to drive. She put her head against the steering wheel and let the silent sobs shake her shoulders. This was the hidden cost the apps never measure, the psychological toll of working through personal tragedy while serving other people's celebrations. She gave herself exactly 2 minutes. Then she wiped her eyes fiercely, checked her reflection in the mirror, and practiced her smile. It didn't reach her eyes, but it would have to do. She found the apartment building, grabbed the hot bag, walked through the gently falling snow toward the door under a porch light adorned with a single green wreath. She could hear the faint sound of a Christmas movie from inside. She took one more steadying breath, fixed that professional smile on her face, and rang the bell. Inside, Ben yelled, "I'll get it," and scrambled toward the door. Alex followed, cash in hand. Ben pulled the door open, letting in a swirl of cold air and snowflakes. And there she was, Sarah Jennings in her red delivery jacket, holding the pizza box, her eyes red-rimmed and glistening despite her best efforts. Alex saw it immediately. The puffy eyes, the forced smile, the tremor in her hands as she held out the order. "Hi, Morgan family, that'll be $24.50. But Ben, with the unfiltered perception of a child, didn't see a transaction. He saw a person. He stared up at her, his own movie forgotten, and asked a question so simple it shattered Sarah's careful facade. "Are you sad because you're working on Christmas Eve?" Sarah's practiced response died in her throat. The kindness in his voice, the directness of his empathy, was a spear through her armor. She blinked, and a single tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek she couldn't brush away fast enough. Alex, frozen for a second, saw it all. The pain, the embarrassment, the humanity. Before he could think, before he could consider the awkwardness or the boundaries, Ben spoke again, his small voice filled with a certainty that would change everything. "You should have dinner with us. We have lots of pizza." Sarah looked from the innocent face of the boy to the startled expression of the father holding cash in the doorway. The warm light from their apartment spilled out into the cold, dark night. And in that suspended moment, the algorithm ended, and a human connection began. But what Alex didn't know, what Ben couldn't possibly understand, was that they weren't just inviting a tired delivery driver to dinner. They were inviting in a ghost of Christmas past, and the truth she carried was about to reshape their future forever. The silence that followed Ben's invitation was a living thing, stretched thin over the winter air. Sarah stood frozen on the threshold, the pizza box a warm weight in her hands, caught between a professional retreat and a human surrender. Her training, the unspoken rule of the gig, screamed to decline politely and walk away. But the warmth spilling from the apartment, the hopeful look in the boy's eyes, and her own devastating loneliness formed a counterweight she couldn't overcome. Alex broke the standstill. He saw the war behind her eyes. He'd worn that same look in the mirror for months after the divorce. "It's a terrible night to be out," he said, his voice softer than before. "We really do have plenty. Please come in for a minute at least. Warm up." That was the permission Sarah didn't know she needed, a practical excuse. Not pity but shelter from the storm. She nodded, a jerky motion, and stepped inside. "Just for a minute. I don't want to intrude." But she was already intruding in the best possible way. The atmosphere in the apartment shifted. It was no longer just a father and son's private ritual. A stranger's grief had entered the room, and with it, a sudden, shared responsibility. Ben, oblivious to the adult tension, beamed. "You can put your coat here. Dad, can she have the big plate?" He was already dragging a dining chair over, transforming their cozy movie night setup into an impromptu table for three. Alex took the pizza box. "I'm Alex, by the way, and this is Ben." "Sarah," she said, unzipping her red jacket but leaving it on, as if ready for a quick escape. She sat gingerly at the place Ben had set, her eyes taking in the modest apartment, the lopsided gingerbread house, the twinkling tree, the evidence of a small, loving effort. It was a scene so achingly familiar it made her chest hurt. Alex busied himself getting plates and napkins, falling back on the script of host. "Can I get you a drink? Water, soda?" "Water is fine, thank you." Sarah's voice was quiet, strained. She was performing the deep acting now, the effortful process of trying to align her internal feelings with the expected calm. But the cracks were showing. Ben, however, had no script. He sat across from her, elbows on the table, chin in his hands. "Why were you crying?" "Ben," Alex said, a gentle warning in his tone as he set down the glasses. "It's okay," Sarah said, and this time she meant it. There was a disarming honesty in the child's question that cut through the pretense adults usually demanded. She looked at Ben. "I was crying because I miss my family. Today is a hard day to miss people." Ben nodded solemnly. "My mom doesn't live here anymore. I miss her sometimes on days that aren't even hard." Alex's hand stilled on the pizza cutter. The simplicity of his son's statement, offered as comfort, was a small dagger. He saw Sarah's face soften with recognition. She was on familiar ground here, the landscape of absence. "What happened to your family?" Ben asked. This time Alex intervened. "Ben, that's a very personal question. Sarah doesn't have to." "They were in an accident," Sarah said, the words coming out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for so long that the slightest pressure released them. "Almost 3 years ago, a car accident. I was the only one who wasn't in the car." The room went still. The only sound was the muffled dialogue from the paused Christmas movie on the TV. Alex slowly sat down. The pieces clicked into place with a terrible clarity. The red eyes working on Christmas Eve, the profound sadness that seemed too deep for a bad shift. This wasn't just holiday blues. This was foundational grief. "I'm so sorry," Alex said, the words feeling entirely inadequate. Sarah just nodded, staring at her hands folded on the table. "Thank you, I usually have a plan for today. I volunteer at a soup kitchen. Anything to be around people, to not be alone in my apartment. But this year I just couldn't. I thought maybe staying busy working would be easier. It wasn't." This was the hidden reality of the gig economy for the grieving. The platforms offer flexibility, but they also enable isolation. You can work through your pain, but you do it in a vacuum, moving between anonymous locations without any real human anchor. Sarah had chosen the vacuum, and it had nearly swallowed her whole. Ben pushed the plate with the largest slice of pizza toward her. "My dad says pizza makes everything a little better." A fragile, real smile touched Sarah's lips. "Your dad is a smart man." They ate in a silence that was no longer awkward but contemplative. The shared meal began to work its ancient magic. The act of breaking bread, even if it was pepperoni and cheese, lowered defenses. Alex found himself talking, not about the divorce, but about the challenges of single parenthood. The constant balancing act, the fear of not being enough, the sheer exhaustion of being the only emotional anchor for a small person. Sarah listened, and in her listening, Alex felt seen in a way he hadn't in years. She didn't offer platitudes. She just nodded, understanding the weight he was describing because she carried a different but equally heavy weight. Then Ben, fueled by pizza and a captive audience, launched into a detailed explanation of the gingerbread house engineering disaster. Sarah asked thoughtful questions, genuinely engaging with his story. She didn't talk down to him. She met him at his level, and Alex watched as a little of the light returned to Ben's eyes, the disappointment over the imperfect house forgotten in the joy of explaining it. This was the pivot, the moment the narrative reframed. This wasn't just a story about a kind act for a stranger. It was the unveiling of a reciprocal need. Alex, in his quest to give Ben a perfect Christmas, was lonely in his role as the sole provider of magic. Sarah, drowning in isolation, was desperate for connection. And Ben, the child, became the bridge, his innate empathy creating a safe passage for two wounded adults to meet in the middle. As they finished eating, Sarah's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket. She pulled it out, her face immediately paling. The screen showed a notification from the delivery app. Your acceptance rate is falling. Consistent rejection of orders may affect your access to premium shifts. The cold mechanics of the system had found her, even here. The algorithm, indifferent to human crisis, was scolding her for pausing, for being human. I should probably get going, she said, the spell of the moment breaking. I'm still on the clock. They'll reassign my block if I'm inactive too long. Alex felt a surge of protective anger. On Christmas Eve, you can't take a break to eat. Sarah gave a hollow laugh. The peak holiday multiplier is active. If I log out, I lose it, and I need the money. The admission was tinged with shame. This was the escalation. The personal tragedy was now colliding with institutional pressure. The app's architecture, designed for maximum efficiency, was actively punishing her for accepting a moment of kindness. The financial precarity researchers document, the need to work through illness, grief, and exhaustion, was playing out in real time in Alex's living room. Ben looked from his father to Sarah, sensing the shift. Can't you stay for the movie? It's the best part. Sarah looked at the boy, then at the notification on her phone, a war between economic survival and emotional salvation. It was a choice no one should have to make on Christmas Eve. Before she could answer, Alex made a decision. What if you called it a night, just end your shift, stay for the movie, as a Christmas gift from us? Sarah shook her head. I can't accept that. You've already been so kind. It's not charity, Alex said, a new idea forming. It's a trade. You give Ben someone new to explain the movie to, he loves that, and you give me, well, adult conversation that isn't about cartoon reindeer, and in return you get a few hours off the clock. No algorithm, no snow, just peace. He was offering her a temporary exit from the system, a human override. Sarah stared at him, the offer so foreign it took a moment to compute. The constant pressure to optimize, to hustle, to earn, had been her reality for so long. The idea of voluntarily stepping away, especially during a lucrative shift, felt almost irresponsible. But the alternative was returning to the cold car, to the lonely circuit of deliveries, to the silent grief amplified by every festive house she approached. Her phone buzzed again. Another order, this one with a surge price, flashed on the screen. A $15 delivery for 20 minutes of work. She imagined the customer, another family, another warm doorway from which she'd be excluded. She looked at Ben's expectant face. She looked at Alex, whose expression held no judgment, only quiet understanding. She thought of her empty, dark apartment waiting for her. With a trembling finger, she tapped her screen. She swiped to log out. The app asked, "Are you sure? You will forfeit peak pay bonuses." She was sure. "I'd love to stay for the movie," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Ben cheered. Alex felt a profound relief he couldn't explain. Sarah placed her phone face down on the table, a symbolic rejection of the demands that had been dictating her life. They moved to the couch. Ben insisted on sitting between them, a self-appointed buffer and commentator. As the movie played, something remarkable happened. The initial heavy sorrow began to lift, replaced by a gentle, shared contentment. Ben laughed at the silly parts, and Sarah and Alex found themselves laughing with him. For brief stretches, Sarah forgot to be sad. For Alex, the pressure to perform the perfect Christmas evaporated, leaving the genuine article in its place. Imperfect, messy, but real. During a quiet scene, Ben leaned his head against Sarah's arm. It was a simple, trusting gesture. Sarah went very still, then slowly relaxed, a single tear tracing a new path down her cheek. This one, however, wasn't born of pure grief. It was the poignant ache of a memory of love, triggered by the presence of new, gentle connection. Alex saw it. He understood in that moment that their kindness wasn't just giving Sarah a break. It was giving her proof. Proof that she could still connect, that she wasn't defined solely by her loss, that the world still held pockets of softness. For a woman who'd spent 3 years building walls, this was a seismic event. As the movie credits rolled, Ben was fast asleep, slumped against Sarah. The late hour and the emotional whirlwind had finally claimed him. "Should I?" Sarah whispered, hesitant to move. "It's okay," Alex said softly. He gently lifted Ben, who murmured but didn't wake. "I'll just be a minute." He carried Ben to his bedroom. Sarah stood in the quiet living room looking at the remnants of their evening, the empty plates, the discarded pizza box, the sad gingerbread house. It felt beautifully, wonderfully normal, a normal she thought had died with her family. When Alex returned, he found her by the tree, staring at a framed photo on the mantel. It was of Alex, his ex-wife Lauren, and a baby Ben, all smiling, a relic from the before times. "It's okay to be happy," Alex said quietly from behind her. "It doesn't mean you love them any less." Sarah turned, her eyes searching his. "How did you?" "Because I feel the same way sometimes. When I laugh with Ben, really laugh, there's this tiny voice that says, 'You shouldn't be this happy, your family is broken.' But it's a lie. My family isn't broken, it's just different now." Sarah nodded, swallowing hard. Tonight is the first time since the accident that I haven't felt completely alone on this day. I thought I had to be alone to honor them, to feel the full weight of missing them. But this feels like honoring them too, letting in a little light." That was the second, deeper pivot. The revelation that healing isn't about the magnitude of the grief you endure, but about the connections you allow yourself to make in spite of it. Alex walked her to the door. The snow had stopped, leaving a pristine, silent world outside. "Thank you, Alex, and thank Ben for me. You have no idea what this meant." "I think I'm starting to," he said. He hesitated, then took a risk. "If you don't have plans, we're doing a low-key Christmas brunch tomorrow. Just pancakes, you'd be welcome." Sarah looked at him, and for the first time all night, her smile reached her eyes, crinkling the corners. It was a weary smile, but a real one. "I'll think about it. I really will." She stepped out into the cold, but she didn't feel as cold as before. She turned and gave a small wave before walking to her car. Alex closed the door, leaning against it. His mind was reeling. The entire trajectory of their quiet Christmas had been altered. He felt an unexpected warmth, a sense of rightness. He checked on Ben, sleeping peacefully, then returned to clean up. As he was throwing away the pizza box, he noticed something tucked into the delivery bag Sarah had left behind in her departure. It was a small, worn leather wallet. He picked it up. It must have fallen out of her jacket pocket. He opened it, intending to just check for an ID so he could contact her. His eyes fell on the driver's license. Sarah Jennings. But it was the photo tucked behind it that made his breath catch. It was the same photo she described, the one from the memory notification. Her beaming parents, her younger sister, all in those ridiculous reindeer sweaters. They looked so happy, so complete. And then Alex saw it. Scribbled on the back of the photo in what looked like her sister's teenage handwriting was a note. To Sarah, the best big sis, remember, chaos is just love making noise. Love you forever, M. Alex stared at the words, then at the sleeping silence of his apartment. His heart hammered against his ribs. He had to return this to her. It was clearly her most treasured possession. But as he closed the wallet, a folded piece of paper fluttered out. It was a final notice from a collection agency. The amount owed was staggering. The reason: outstanding medical bills from the accident. The final, devastating piece of the puzzle snapped into place. Her need to work wasn't just about rent or groceries. She was drowning in the financial aftershocks of the very tragedy that took her family. The weight she carried wasn't just emotional. It was a crushing, tangible debt. Alex stood in his kitchen, holding the evidence of Sarah's hidden war, as the clock ticked toward midnight on Christmas Eve. The kind invitation, the shared movie, the connection, it all took on a new, urgent dimension. He had offered her a few hours of peace, but as he looked at that collection notice, he realized her battle was far bigger than one difficult night. And he knew, with a certainty that frightened him, that letting her walk away now wasn't an option. The real question was no longer about a single dinner invitation. It was about what happens the morning after, when the Christmas magic fades and the harsh, demanding world comes knocking again. Alex held the collection notice, the numbers blurring before his eyes. The debt was more than his annual salary. In that moment, the simple act of inviting a stranger to dinner transformed into something else entirely, a moral obligation. The warmth of the evening curdled into a cold, sick feeling in his gut. Her working on Christmas Eve wasn't just about grief avoidance, it was a financial lifeline. Every declined order, every moment of peace she just accepted in his living room, came at a tangible, punishing cost. He couldn't just call her and say he found her wallet. Not now, not with this knowledge burning a hole in his conscience. He carefully placed the photo and the notice back in the wallet. He spent a sleepless night wrestling with the boundaries of help. Was it his place to intervene? Would revealing he'd seen her private financial ruin humiliate her and destroy the fragile connection they'd built? By dawn, his decision was made. He would return the wallet, say nothing about the notice, and simply reiterate the brunch invitation. He would create an opening, a consistent point of human contact. That was all he could ethically do. Christmas morning with Ben was a whirlwind of wrapping paper and joy. Alex played his part, but his mind was elsewhere, clock-watching until a reasonable hour to call. At 10 a.m., he dialed the number from Sarah's driver's license. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail, a generic recording. He left a careful message. "Hi Sarah, it's Alex Morgan, Ben's dad. You left your delivery bag and wallet at our place last night. We'd still love to have you for brunch if you're free. Just give me a call back." An hour passed, no response. Ben noticed his distraction. "Dad, are you waiting for Sarah to call?" The boy's intuition was unnerving. "Just hopping, she's okay, buddy. The roads were pretty bad." Another hour. Alex felt a knot of anxiety tighten. What if she regretted opening up? What if the vulnerability hangover was so severe she was withdrawing completely? The research was clear. Loneliness and shame are powerful isolators. Finally, at noon, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi Alex, it's Sarah. Thank you for finding my wallet. I can swing by to pick it up if that's okay. Brunch might be too much, but I appreciate the offer." The subtext was clear. She was rebuilding the walls. Alex typed back quickly before he could overthink. "We've got pancakes going now and plenty. No pressure, but the door's open. 112 Maple, Unit B." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. The longest minute of Alex's life ticked by. Then, "Okay, be there in 20." When Sarah arrived, she looked exhausted. The small respite of the previous night had vanished, replaced by a hollowed-out weariness. She had her professional smile back on, but it was brittle. Ben, however, was ecstatic. He dragged her to the table, proudly showing her his new toys. Sarah's eyes kept drifting to her wallet, which Alex had placed on the counter. "Thank you for this," she said, picking it up, holding it tightly. There's important things in here." "I know," Alex said, and immediately regretted it. The words hung between them. Sarah's eyes snapped to his, wide with dawning horror. He had seen the photo, and he must have seen the notice. The color drained from her face. "You looked through it," she stated, her voice flat. "Only to find your ID to contact you," Alex said quickly. "The other things, they fell out. I put them back. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to invade your privacy." The shame he'd feared witnessing now flooded her expression. It was followed by a defensive anger. "Well, now you know, the full, pathetic picture. Grieving wreck, drowning in debt, delivering pizzas on holidays. It's quite a sob story, isn't it?" "It's not a story," Alex said, keeping his voice low so Ben wouldn't hear from the other room. "It's your life. And it's not pathetic, it's unfair. What happened to you was unfair, and the aftermath is even more unfair." The anger in her eyes wavered, replaced by a sheen of tears. "You don't understand. Those medical bills, they're not even for me. They're for them, for the emergency response, for the procedures at the hospital that couldn't save them. I was the next of kin. The bills came to me. I thought insurance would cover it, but there were caps, loopholes. It's a debt for people who don't even exist anymore. And I can't get out from under it." This was the "it gets worse" moment. The cruelty of the situation deepened. She wasn't just paying for her own survival. She was financially shackled to the memory of her family, billed for their final moments. The systemic failure was complete, a healthcare and insurance apparatus that could compound tragedy with lifelong financial ruin. Alex felt a surge of helpless rage. There has to be something, a lawyer, debt forgiveness, something. Sarah shook her head, a gesture of utter defeat. "I've tried, it's a maze, and it costs money. I don't have to fight it, so I deliver pizzas and I pay what I can, and the interest grows. It's my life now." She looked toward the living room where Ben was playing. "You have a good life here, Alex, a beautiful son. Don't let my mess touch it. Thank you for last night. It was a gift. But this is my reality." She turned to leave. This was the countermove Alex had feared. Her pride and her despair were sending her back into isolation, back onto the punishing hamster wheel of gig work. "Wait," Ben's voice cut through the tension. He stood in the doorway holding a toy airplane. He had heard everything. His small face was serious. "You can't go. We made you pancakes." The simplicity of it, the child's logic that food and company were the answer to adult-sized problems, broke the standoff. Sarah looked at Ben, and the will to flee seemed to drain out of her. "Come on," Alex said gently. "Just pancakes. No talking about debts or hard things, just syrup." Sarah hesitated, then nodded, defeated not by Alex, but by the pure, uncomplicated kindness in a child's invitation. They ate brunch. The conversation was stilted at first, but Ben again became the bridge. He asked Sarah about her favorite pizza topping, about whether she'd ever delivered to a famous person, about her car. Safe, surface-level territory. Slowly, the air cleared. After eating while Ben was in his room, Sarah spoke quietly. "I'm sorry I snapped. It's just that wallet is my whole life. The before," she gestured to the photo, "and the after," she gestured to the notice. "Carrying it around is like carrying a ghost and a jailer in my pocket." "You don't have to carry it alone," Alex said. The words were out before he could vet them. Sarah gave him a sad, knowing smile. "Yes, I do. That's how this works, but I could maybe not be alone while I'm carrying it, sometimes." It was a monumental concession, an agreement to accept not financial rescue but consistent human presence. That afternoon, Alex proposed an idea, a standing invitation. Sunday dinners. No pressure, no grand gestures, just a weekly check-in, a guaranteed meal off the clock, a tiny, regular escape from the algorithm. Sarah agreed, One dinner a week, that was the new fragile arrangement. The following Sunday she came. She helped Ben with a school project. The week after that, Alex learned she had a degree in graphic design from a local college, a career path abandoned after the accident. He started asking her for opinions on his freelance work. Her feedback was sharp, insightful. A spark of her old self, the professional self buried under grief and debt, flickered to life. But the system wasn't done with her. One Wednesday evening, Sarah arrived for dinner looking shaken. Her rating on the delivery app had dropped below 4.8 stars after a customer claimed a late delivery, a lie, as Sarah had been stuck behind an accident. The drop meant she lost access to the preferred scheduling tier. Her income would take a direct hit. "This is what I mean," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. "You're always one bad interaction, one unfair rating away from ruin. There's no appeal. The algorithm decides." Alex witnessed firsthand the arbitrary power these platforms wield over the lives of their workers. The stress researchers documented the 75% of drivers with stress levels indicating high health risks wasn't an abstract statistic. It was the pale, anxious woman at his dinner table, fearing her already precarious income was about to shrink further because of a stranger's dishonesty. This crisis, however, led to the second major pivot. Alex, furious at the injustice, had an idea. "You said you've tried fighting the medical debt and hit walls. What if we fought this? The rating. What if we gathered evidence, appealed not just to the algorithm, but to a human?" Sarah was skeptical. "They don't care." "Maybe not, but what if we made them care? What if we showed them the person behind the rating?" Together that night, they crafted an appeal. Alex helped her write a clear, factual email. Sarah provided her GPS location history, proving she was at the restaurant at the claimed pickup time. But Alex pushed her to add a personal line. Just one. "I am a human being trying to meet my obligations, and my ability to do so depends on the fairness of this system." They sent it. They expected nothing. 2 days later, Sarah got a generic response. The rating would stand. The system had spoken. The defeat was crushing. It felt like a microcosm of her entire struggle, a faceless entity imposing a judgment that altered her reality with no recourse. But then something unexpected happened. Alex, still simmering with anger, posted about the experience on a local community forum. Not using Sarah's name, but describing the situation. A driver unfairly penalized, the real-world consequences, the failed appeal. He framed it as a question about accountability in the gig economy. The post tapped into a simmering local resentment. Other delivery drivers commented with similar stories. Customers expressed outrage. The post gained traction, then went locally viral. A reporter from the city's Metro newspaper saw it and reached out to Alex. This was the escalation into public consequences. The private struggle was about to be exposed. Alex called Sarah, panicked. "A reporter wants to talk about the unfair rating system. I didn't use your name, but they might find you if they dig. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would go this far." Sarah was silent for a long time. Then she said something that shocked him. "Give them my name." "What?" "If they want to talk to a driver, they should talk to a real one. They should see the face of the person their algorithm is screwing over. And maybe while they're looking, they can see the rest of it too. The debt, the grief, the whole impossible package. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." This was Sarah's countermove. From a place of defeat, she found a fierce, desperate courage. If the system was going to crush her, she would at least make sure it saw her face while it did it. The interview was harrowing. Sarah sat with the reporter in Alex's living room with his support and told her entire story. Not just the unfair rating, but the accident, the medical debt, the soul-crushing grind of working to pay a bill for a tragedy. She broke down twice. The reporter listened, her professional demeanor softening into genuine compassion. The article came out the following Sunday. The headline was brutal. "Paying for the past. how a delivery driver's grief was compounded by debt and algorithms. It featured a photo of Sarah, looking weary but determined, sitting on her car bumper in her red delivery jacket. The article detailed the unfair rating dispute, but it anchored it in the larger context of her life. It quoted the research on gig worker mental health and financial precarity. It laid bare the cruel irony of her situation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The newspaper's website crashed under the traffic. The story was picked up by regional news, then national. Offers for help poured in. A nonprofit specializing in medical debt negotiation reached out. A local law firm offered pro bono assistance to contest the bills. Strangers started a crowdfunding campaign. Within 48 hours, it had surpassed $50,000. Sarah was in a state of shock. She stood in Alex's kitchen, refreshing the crowdfunding page on his laptop, watching the number climb. This is too much. I can't accept this. This isn't charity, Alex said, pointing to the article on the screen. This is restitution. People read your story and they're outraged at the injustice. They're not giving you a handout. They're trying to correct a wrong. But with the spotlight came a new, terrifying vulnerability. The exposure was a double-edged sword. The day after the article ran, Sarah received a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. A man's voice, cold and official. "Ms. Jennings, this is a courtesy call regarding your outstanding financial obligations. Public fundraising efforts do not discharge your legal liabilities. Please have your attorney contact our office." It was from the collection agency. They had seen the article too. Then came the email from the gig platform's legal department. A terse, formal notice. "While we sympathize with your personal situation, your public statements have violated Section 12 of your independent contractor agreement regarding disparagement of the platform. Your account has been suspended pending review." The final, brutal twist, the system's retaliation. By speaking out, by seeking public help, Sarah had triggered the very mechanisms designed to silence and control. They had taken away her income source entirely. The crowdfunding money, a potential lifeline, was now under threat from the collection agency, and she was out of a job. The "wait, it gets worse" moment had arrived with devastating force. Sarah crumpled. The hope that had begun to flicker was extinguished under a deluge of institutional pushback. "I told you," she whispered, staring at the suspension email. "I told you fighting it just makes it worse. Now I have nothing. No job and a target on my back." Alex felt a cold fury. They had tried to play by the rules, then tried to expose the rules as unjust. Both paths led to Sarah being punished. It felt like a game rigged at every turn. But in that nadir, Ben, who had been quietly drawing at the table, looked up. He had been listening. He slid his drawing towards Sarah. It was a crude but heartfelt picture. A stick-figure woman in a red jacket standing next to a tall stick-figure man and a small boy. Above them, he'd written in his best handwriting, "Team Sarah." He looked at her with absolute seriousness. "My teacher says when you're on a team, you don't quit, even when it's hard. We're your team now." The child's words, for the second time, cut through the despair. Sarah looked at the drawing, then at Alex's determined face, then back at Ben. She was out of options, out of energy, out of fight, but she wasn't out of people. Alex took a deep breath. The stakes had just been raised to their highest point. This was no longer about a single dinner or a standing invitation. It was a full-blown battle against a set of interconnected systems, corporate, financial, legal, that had ground a human being down. They had the public's attention, but they also had powerful enemies. And Sarah's survival was now inextricably linked to their small, makeshift family. "Okay," Alex said, his voice steady with a resolve he didn't know he possessed. "Then it's time our team got a real game plan. They've shown us their worst move. Now let's figure out ours." Game plans born in kitchen corners are often built on equal parts desperation and hope. For Team Sarah, the strategy had three fronts: the law, the court of public opinion, and the quiet, daily work of healing a heart. The pro bono lawyers, a fierce two-person firm named Alvarez and Chen, became their first line of offense. They attacked the medical debt with a two-pronged approach. First, they filed a challenge, arguing the bills were erroneously assigned to Sarah as the estate's representative for services rendered to deceased individuals, a legal gray area they believed could be contested. Second, they opened negotiations with the collection agency, using the burgeoning crowdfunding campaign not as a piggy bank, but as leverage. The goal, attorney Maria Alvarez explained, isn't just to pay this off. It's to expose the predatory nature of the billing and get it significantly reduced, or better yet, dismissed. Simultaneously, Alex helped Sarah craft a follow-up public statement. This time, it wasn't just her story. It was a response to the platform's suspension. They posted it on the same community forum, and Alex shared it with the reporter who'd broken the initial story. The statement was calm, factual, and devastating. It outlined the sequence: unfair rating, failed appeal, public sharing of her experience, then retaliatory suspension. It ended with a question that resonated with thousands. If sharing the truth about my working conditions is disparagement, what does that say about the conditions themselves? The public reaction was a wave of sustained outrage. The story evolved from a tragic profile to a battle cry against corporate overreach. Other media outlets picked it up. A state senator tweeted about looking into retaliatory deactivation practices. The crowdfunding soared past $100,000, but more importantly, a grassroots campaign of emails and calls flooded the gig platform's support lines, demanding Sarah's reinstatement. Through it all, the Sunday dinners continued. They became the anchor, the quiet eye of the hurricane. Ben, Team Sarah drawing was taped to the refrigerator. In this space, Sarah wasn't a cause or a victim. She was just Sarah. She helped with homework. She and Alex debated design trends. She slowly, tentatively began to smile without it looking like a physical effort. One evening, Alex was struggling with a client's logo. Sarah glanced over his shoulder at his laptop. "The kerning is off," she said softly, then blushed, as if her professional opinion had escaped without permission. Alex slid the laptop toward her. "Show me." She did. Her hands, which usually fidgeted with anxiety, became steady and precise on the trackpad. In minutes, she'd adjusted the spacing, tweaked a curve, and the design snapped into focus. It was a small thing, but it was a seismic reclamation. She was using a skill from her before life, not in service of her after asterisk survival. "You're really good at this," Alex said, his voice filled with awe. Sarah stared at the screen at her own competent work. "I forgot I could do this," she whispered. That moment became a new plan within the plan. Alex began subcontracting small design tasks to her from his own freelance overflow. He paid her fairly through proper invoices. It was a trickle of income, but it was dignified, skilled work that reminded her of who she was before tragedy struck. The psychological impact was profound. She wasn't just a delivery driver or a debt statistic. She was a designer again. The legal and public relations battles, however, were grueling. The collection agency dug in, threatening to escalate to wage garnishment if the crowdfunding money was received. The gig platform remained silent, a wall of corporate impenetrability. The stress was taking its toll. Sarah had nightmares again. Alex found himself snapping at Ben over minor things, his own resources stretched thin. The breaking point came during a conference call with the lawyers. The agency had made a final offer, a settlement for 60 cents on the dollar. It was still a staggering sum, one that would consume almost the entire crowdfunding. "It's the best we're likely to get without a protracted, expensive court fight," David Chen said, his voice apologetic. Sarah looked numb. "So I use all the money strangers gave me to pay a bill for my family's death, and I'm supposed to be grateful for the discount." It felt like a sick parody of justice. They would be using humanity's generosity to satisfy a system's cruelty. The air in Alex's living room was thick with defeat. Then Ben, who'd been coloring quietly at the table, spoke up. "Why do you have to pay it all?" he asked, not looking up from his drawing. The people who sent the bill, they're not on our team. The childish logic was, in its purest form, brilliant. Why legitimize a contested, morally dubious debt? Maria Alvarez's eyes lit up on the video call. The boy has a point. We haven't lost the legal challenge yet. What if we refuse the settlement? What if we call their bluff, take it to a judge, and argue the debt is invalid while the public spotlight is on them? It's a risk, a big one, but the agency might fold under the scrutiny. It was a terrifying gamble. Risk losing everything in court or accept a soul-crushing settlement. Sarah looked at Alex, then at Ben. "What would Team Sarah do?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alex took her hand. "Team Sarah fights." They instructed the lawyers to reject the settlement and proceed with the challenge. The following week was agony, but the pressure worked. Faced with a noisy public scandal and a determined legal team willing to drag them into court, the collection agency folded. They agreed to a complete dismissal of the debt in exchange for a confidentiality agreement and a fraction of the crowdfunding money to cover administrative fees. It was a near-total victory. The news arrived via email. Sarah read it 3 times before the words made sense. The anchor that had been dragging her to the ocean floor for 3 years was gone. She didn't cry. She just sat down on the floor, her back against the couch, and breathed. Deep, shuddering breaths of a person unshackled. The gig platform's reversal came next. Under mounting public and political pressure, they reinstated her account with a canned apology about process errors. They also, quietly, adjusted her rating back. It was a hollow victory, but a practical one. Sarah looked at the notification, then at Alex. "I never want to log into that app again," she said. "So don't," he replied. With the debt gone, the crowdfunding money, now a significant sum even after the legal fees, became something else, a foundation. Sarah used part of it to enroll in a refresher course in digital design. She used another part as a security deposit on a brighter, cleaner apartment. Not a home filled with ghosts, but a space for a future. And through it all, something unspoken had been weaving itself between her and Alex. It was in the quiet glances over breakfast, in the effortless way they shared space, in the deep, abiding friendship that had been forged in crisis. One evening, after Ben was asleep, they were cleaning up the kitchen. Their hands brushed while reaching for the same dish towel. They both stopped. Alex looked at her, really looked at her. The shadows under her eyes were lighter. Her posture wasn't so defensive. "You look good," he said. Sarah smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "I feel possible." He didn't plan the next part. He just leaned in and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, a question. Sarah answered by deepening the kiss, her hands coming up to frame his face. It was a kiss that tasted of shared struggle, of hard-won peace, of a future they'd built together from the broken pieces of their pasts. They pulled apart, foreheads resting together. "What does this mean?" Sarah breathed. "It means," Alex said, "that I'm in love with you, and I have been for a while." "I love you too," she said. The words felt terrifying and absolutely right. They decided together to take it slow. For Ben, for themselves. But their family, which had begun as a duo, then expanded to a trio, now quietly, solidly became a unit. Here is the final surprising detail. Sarah, with her newfound stability and design skills, didn't just go back to a regular job. She and Alex started a tiny freelance studio together, and their first pro bono client, a non-profit advocacy group for gig workers. Sarah designed their website and campaign materials, her personal experience informing every choice. Her pain became her purpose. Her survival became a tool to help others. 1 year to the day after that snowy Christmas Eve, they all stood together on the sidewalk outside Sarah's new apartment. It was a crisp, clear December evening. Ben, now 8, held both their hands, swinging between them. "Are we getting pizza tonight?" he asked. Alex and Sarah exchanged a smile. "I think that's a good tradition," Sarah said. They walked to a local pizzeria, sat in a booth, and ordered. No one was crying. No one was hiding a world of grief. They were just a family, laughing, talking over each other, enjoying a meal. The ordinary magic of it was everything. As they ate, Sarah took out her phone, not to check for delivery orders, but to show them a photo. It was a picture of her old family, the one in the reindeer sweaters, now framed on her new desk. Next to it was another photo, Alex, Ben, and her, making silly faces at the camera at the zoo the previous summer. "I keep them together," she said softly. "The people who made me and the people who remade me." Alex reached over and squeezed her hand. Ben, his mouth full of pizza, said, "We're all on the same team." And they were. The story that began with a child noticing tears ended with a family forged in compassion. Sarah's financial debt was gone, but the emotional one, the debt of kindness she felt she owed Alex and Ben, was paid daily in love, in presence, in the simple act of showing up. Alex got more than he ever imagined, not just a partner, but a testament to the power of saying yes to a stranger. And Ben got the answer to his innocent question. You heal a broken heart by offering it a seat at your table, and then never letting it feel alone again. The systems they fought, the impersonal algorithms, the crushing debt, had been pushed back, not defeated. But in that specific singular human victory, a blueprint for resistance was drawn. It proved that while the world is built on cold transactions, our lives are built on warmer, braver ones. On the courage to ask, "Are you sad?" and the greater courage to stay for the answer. As they left the pizzeria, snow began to fall again, just like it had a year before. But this time, Sarah didn't feel the cold. She was on the inside, looking out at the beauty of it, hand in hand with her family. The delivery had been made, the order was complete, and a new life against all odds had been delivered in return. Alex and Sarah's story is a specific blueprint, but the architecture it reveals is universal. It shows us that the most profound changes in our lives often arrive not as grand plans, but as interrupted routines. A crowded cafe, a snowy doorstep, a moment where the script of normal life falters, and we're presented with a simple, terrifying choice: look away or look closer. We live in a world increasingly optimized for transaction, for ratings, for efficiency, for the smooth, frictionless delivery of goods and services. But within that system, as the research screams, are human beings. Over 95% of food delivery drivers report occupational stress. 3/4 show stress levels linked to serious health risks. They are performing emotional labor, managing their own humanity while facilitating our convenience, often while carrying invisible burdens like Sarah's. The algorithm doesn't see the grief, the debt, the loneliness. It only sees acceptance rates and completion times. This story asks us a lingering question. In a world built on platforms, who builds the safety nets? The answer, perhaps uncomfortably, is us, each other. It is the child who notices tears instead of just a uniform. It is the parent who chooses to invite in awkwardness rather than shut the door on discomfort. It is the decision to see the person behind the service, not as a heroic act, but as a basic restoration of dignity. Ben's question, "Are you sad?" was the key that unlocked everything. It was the sound of innate human empathy cutting through the noise of transaction. Research tells us children are wired for this kindness from infancy. The tragedy is how often we unlearn it as we grow, how we train ourselves to see the role and not the individual, the service and not the soul performing it. Sarah's journey from a ghost in the machine to a woman rebuilding her life with love and purpose is a testament to what happens when we refuse to accept the cold mechanics of the world as the final word. Her victory wasn't just over debt or an unfair rating. It was a victory of connection over isolation, of community over indifference, of the warm, messy reality of human care over the cold, clean logic of systems. So the next time your delivery arrives, or you're served by someone in a uniform, or you pass a stranger who seems a little lost in their own world, remember this. You are not just looking at a functionary in the great machine of daily life. You are looking at a novel's worth of stories, a galaxy of struggles and hopes, a human being who might be one kind word away from finding their way back to the light. You might not be able to solve their debt or heal their grief, but you can acknowledge their humanity. You can be the reason their day contains one less moment of loneliness, one more moment of feeling seen. That is the real, quiet revolution. It doesn't require a platform or a crowdfunding campaign. It starts with a shift in perception. It starts with choosing to believe that the smallest threads of compassion, woven together by strangers, can mend tears in the social fabric we all share. If this story reminded you of the power you hold in simple moments of kindness, then you've already felt the shift. Your attention to this narrative is part of that same fabric. If you want to keep exploring the real, human stories hidden in plain sight, stories that challenge the systems and celebrate the connections that make life worth living, then hit that subscribe button below. We have so many more stories to tell, and we'd love for you to be here for the next one. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for remembering that sometimes the most important delivery is what's in the box. It's what happens when you open the door.